All right. I will now demonstrate for you the ancient art of Aeon Door. I will draw an Aeon in front of the camera. Here we go. Oh, sorry. I have no magical powers.
Well, with that disappointing display, welcome back to the 800's again. Sorry for the delay on that. We are having some technical issues with OBS, and our tech guy Alan is working behind the scenes to just make this possible. He is kind of bending over backwards tonight, so a round of applause for Alan, yay! And a round of applause for our resident non-magician, my co-host Adam, and I'm your fellow co-host Alex. And with that, why don't we just jump right into the plugs so we can get to talking about this book?
Sure thing. Let's start off with the Etsy plug, because I always forget it. DM's Table now has an Etsy page, and it's super dope, so you should check it out. They've got things like Tetris magnets and Zelda gem keyrings and video game character keychains. It's really neat. It's all like 3D printed stuff. It's definitely worth a look. I've got the Tetris set myself, and it's highly dope. So check it out. Otherwise, if you joined us while we were loading, shall we say, you heard some music. That was Fearless First from Incompetech. Incompetech.filmmusic.io is where you can find all sorts of super sweet and savvy sounds. So check them out. We use them for everything. They're cool. They're awesome. All of their tunes are prime. Otherwise, check out our YouTube channel. The link is below the video. We post all of these as well as other videos on YouTube. And finally, I'd like to talk about Audible. Oh, actually, not finally. Two more things. Audible is where I listen to all of my audiobooks. I listen to every book that we do. Sometimes I try and read them, but for the most part, I just listen to them. Audio is a great format for novels, especially with some of the narrators that we've had lately that are absolutely excellent at modulating their voice and really making the story come alive in a new media. So check out dmstable.com/audible to join Audible today and get 1 month free subscription with 1 free book. And finally, Patreon is how we afford to keep the lights on. You should join us on Patreon if you would like to. The link is below the video. $2 is our lowest pledge, and that gets you the right to vote. That's right. In our democracy, you pay to vote. Vote. Anyway, over to Alex to talk about the book.
Well, and with our Patreon, the more people we get, the more we're going to be willing and have the resources to put in more cool stuff. We have some ideas. It's just once we get the ball rolling and have some more people and can devote time and resources to it, we'd love to do some more stuff for you. So the more people we get, the more people you get, the more stuff you get. So anyways, with that, this week on the 800's, we'll be discussing the novel Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. The city of Elantris was once a beacon of prosperity and magic, and its inhabitants seen as living gods. Then cataclysm struck. The Elantrians were cursed, magic disappeared, and their city fell into ruin. A mere 10 years later, Prince Raoden of Erelon awakens to find himself cursed by the Sheod. This curse transforms one into an Elantrian, bringing with it immortality, but also insatiable hunger and unending pain. He's banished to the fallen city just as his betrothed, Princess Serenia of Teod, arrives, and separately, the Darethri missionary, Euron Hrathen. Each in their own way struggles to discover the secrets of Elantris and struggle for the very soul of the nation of Erelon.
That was good. A lot of good deets there.
Yeah, this one was a tough one, but I like it.
Yeah. There's a lot of complex names in this one too, so it's not the easiest one to rattle off.
I definitely practiced that maybe about 10 times.
So a little history on how the 800's works real quick for anybody joining us for the first time or any of you who just need a refresher. Essentially, we will pose a topic to discuss. The topic can be in the form of a question or just a broad general idea. Where those ideas and questions come from are either Alex or myself or chat. So if you have something you would like to talk to, throw it up in chat at any time. And when we have a break from a question, we'll throw it up there for the next discussion. So the way that the 800s feels more alive and more entertaining is with chat support. So definitely throw out anything you want to talk about Elantris, and we'll get right to it.
And as always, just a quick reminder, this is a show geared towards adults. We cover adult topics and themes in the book, as well as, while we try not to swear too much or rely on it, it does happen from time to time, so bring kids around at your own discretion. Also, we're trying to create a fun and support a community over here at DM's Table and the 800s, where people can feel free to share in all of their hobbies and interests without feeling judged. So in some, be nice or bug right off.
Did you say bug off?
Fug right off. Like,
oh, fug off. Okay. I was like, what'd you say?
My nephews are in the back. My nephews are in the background. That is the discretion part. I don't guarantee it's going to go that well for the remainder of the show, but.
Oh man, that was funny. It just caught me off guard because I'm used to the saying. I thought I had that bookmark around here, but
no, it's fuck off, but spelled F-U-Q.
All right, so let's get right into the chat. It's kind of a late start for this one, so
yeah.
eager to talk about Elantris. What were your first impressions, Alex and chat?
Honestly, I thought it was a little slow going and confusing at first. I read this like the physical book first, and then I just finished up listening to the audio like last night. But in both cases, there's just, you're thrown headlong into this world where so many of the names are similar. There's a lot of complex stuff like right up front, and it's a lot to keep track of, and you don't fully understand why. And I know Brandon Sanderson has a habit of like filling in the gaps of the world around you. Like that's kind of what he does. This one just felt a little more confusing than the other of his books that I've read. Again, this is just the first impressions, but like it took me a little while to get to a place where I was like, I think I've got a handle on who he's, who's being talked about and who they are without forgetting like their contact, without forgetting like, what this person's deal is. I mean, and it also, the cast is just massive. So like that's on top of the setting and the political systems, the religious systems, the geography of everything. It's just a lot. I feel almost as disoriented as like one of the main characters, Prince Raoden, when he wakes up in Elantris and he's just like, "Oh, hey, I'm cursed now." What about you, Adam?
I definitely agree. Like, there's a lot of details thrown at you right from the get-go. I think that's something Brandon Sanderson kind of grows into, and I'd say it is a weakness of a lot of authors. Is how do you start a book? How do you start a story really when you've got all of this planned out? You've got all these details that you want to share. Like you can't just go, okay, 1, there's this city. 2, it's called Elantris. 3, there's these dead people. Like you can't just rattle off a list. And I think this is a good example of Brandon Sanderson learning how to entice a reader from the get-go. And I don't think he had quite mastered it by Elantris. But, the ideas that he throws out, though, are all very captivating. He starts a lot of stories right off the bat He's got Raoden in Elantris right away. It's like, okay, cool. We're gonna find out about Elantris. We got Serene coming to the city. All right, well, we're gonna learn about what Serene can do. We got Serene's homeland back in Teod. There's stuff going on there. There's the Yorn. All of this, all from the start. It's like, okay, cool. There's a ton of details. Definitely can be overwhelming, but I found it captivating and interesting to find out more.
Well, yeah, I think that is the one thing though that like at this point Brandon Sanderson had already mastered is he knows his main points of lore that will keep you hooked like from the beginning. In fact, I read a couple things like after I'd finished the book the first time through, I read a couple things from like his actual website where he talked about the making of some of his books and specifically referenced Elantris, and he's talking about how he had picked out essentially 2 points that are basically at the end of this book, and he's like, how do I get myself there? And built the book around that. And it's interesting to see like that process kind of play out like retrospectively, and I think it speaks to like his style of putting you in a world and having you learn about the world through the characters. Again, not the smoothest version of it, but like he knows where to put things that'll keep you reading, like you said, Adam. Like especially lore, like lore and world building is just his deal, and this book very easily could have been derailed with the amount of information you're thrown at the beginning, but there's just enough stuff to keep you going, and it does culminate in something better. But like as you go on, but for like a first impressions, like I can see a lot of people being turned off by the beginning of this book and just not even making it to the point where it's where like you're like, oh, it was worth it to continue up to this point.
Okay.
Speaking of which, since we both had the same thing, and it looks like, chat had
Straight
something.
also had issues with
Had since we all, size and stuff. Yeah, since we all had that kind of issue. Where like I'm assuming you had that kind of turning point, in the story where you're like, oh, I get it. And like I think I'm finally on track and I can focus on the story less on just making sure I'm not forgetting who the fuck the character is. But like was there a turning point in the story for you where you're like, I get it, and now I can just like read this as a novel rather than like almost a research essay?
Yeah, I think that's probably sometime around when Serene starts deciding to oppose the Yorn. When she's like, I don't know what he's up to. I just know I have to be on the other side. For me is when it's like, okay, I understand where everybody's attention is going to be. Riordan's story was pretty straightforward. He's an Elantris. He's going to figure out how to not fucking die.
Well, he has to figure out how to not go insane.
Okay, fair. He has to figure out how to keep his wits about him.
That's a good way of putting it.
But yeah, I'd say that was it for me. How about you?
Actually, honestly, that was probably one of my 2 major ones. Specifically that little tete-a-tete that they have when she pretends to be dumb in front of him and just like schools him, and you get a sense of 2 of the 3 main characters that you're like, oh, like I'm learning about the characters, not just about the world and the way that they operate. And that sucked me into the characters and the storyline, not just like trying to figure out where the heck I was in this world. Like that very specifically was one of them. And I think the other one was when Raoden meets with the I forget her name, starts with a K, one of the other gang leaders in Elantris.
Carita?
Yeah, Carita, and like when he guides her to the castle and then stops her at the at the gate, and it's just like, I can take her this far, but I can't let her kill my father. And then you get kind of an idea of like what kind of person this guy is, like in general, not just in the context of being in Elantris. Like this is you get your first real glimpse at who he was before, not what the situation kind of forced him to be. And
I think that's such a powerful moment too, because Sanderson spared no expense to ensure the reader that Riordan and his father do not get along and are at polar ends of the political spectrum. So the fact that he, despite being thrown in Elantris by his father, will not allow Carita to kill him is a testament to his character.
Agreed. And I think, by the way, V.S. Drake has a good point in that, like, in this book early on, Brandon Sanderson kind of fell victim to the idea of, like, I need to show the whole iceberg rather than just showing the tip and letting them discover the rest, whether it's by sinking into it with the characters or, navigating around it, whatever the case may be. But, like, yeah, it definitely seemed like this was a learning experience. And even as you go through the novel, you can tell, like, he kind of hits his stride with the storytelling at those moments that we mentioned. And it made it a lot easier to read from that point on. I still got confused in part. Like, it was actually a lot harder for me for the audiobook because, like, seeing the names, you can kind of, like, visually see the differences in them, but so many of them sound so similar that it could get, like, a little confusing even in the later parts. But that was also because I will say this. For the names that he did pick, like, a series of names that sound like they belong in the same world. Like, it made sense, even if it was confusing.
Yeah. It definitely kept the theme on point, having all the names be somewhat similar and follow the kind of same rhythm. That's something I think Sanderson is especially good at, is developing a culture for a story and sticking to it. He develops several cultures really for this book alone, like the Elantrians, and then everybody else in
the Fjordan,
I forget
the Fjordians,
the Fjordell country is one culture. The
like the
country right outside of Elantris.
Teod, and then, like, there's the Durethi and the Duralon or something like that, or Duradel or something.
Duladel.
Duladel, that's the one.
What's the city called that's right outside of Elantris? Where King Iadon rules over it.
God, it starts with a K. But this kind of speaks to part of the issue. Is, like, so many of these things where there's just so much, huh?
Arilon.
Arilon is the country. The city starts with, like, a K. It's like Kaya or something like that. Or Kia. Well, anyway, but, like, again, this speaks to, like, just how big of a world he built, like, so quickly early on, that keeping track of it down the line could be a bit rough. And we've already established as canon on this show that we are not the best with names, even when it's not that hard. So, but anyways, let's get to the question that V.S. Drake asked. Wow, we're jumping right to both the beginning and the end. But what did you think about King Iadon's like, playing the fool and creating a supposedly bad political structure, and then, like, the kind of upending of that when his the writ comes out after his death? Like, what do you think about that? Like, his transfer.
I don't think he was necessarily playing the fool on that, but more so establishing order based on his own personal viewpoint of who should be in charge, and then solidifying it because he knows it's unsolid. I think the timing is a little weird. Like, why wait? Why not just say give it a couple years and then make it firm? Or, straight up say, hey, the richest people in 5 years are going to be nobility and everybody else is just done, and then we're going to get rid of the whole rich people get to be nobles and nobody else does. But I don't know. I don't think it would have changed much story-wise, except for the one character who was on the brink of losing his title because he was going to be too poor come tax season. I think he's the only one who really would have changed his mindset. I think everybody else was like, I've got a lot of money. I'm going to throw it around. Like, I just don't care. And that's going to be how it is. How about you?
I thought it was kind of similar. I thought it was like he had a very specific way of viewing the world. Like it's shown throughout this that he has like, this is the world as I see it. These are the things that are important. These are the things that aren't. And anything that doesn't fit into that is dumb. Like if you look at like his treatment of women and stuff like that, like he sees the world through a business lens, and like he set up something that was basically like unfettered capitalism, and let's see who rises to the top, and then we're going to press pause and make that just like our feudal system. And like I just thought it was misguided from the get-go. And yeah, it does lend some credence to his ability to plan, but like this guy, I think from start to finish, regardless of that change, it makes him a little less malevolent, I think, but still highly misguided in my opinion. And the fact of the matter is he created a system that fosters exploitation of people regardless of what the end goal was. So like you said, it doesn't ultimately change where most people come from, except for, like you said, the couple people who are just in it for their station. I don't think he played the fool quite in the same way as, say, like Serena does. Like hers is very calculated, and she knows it's eventually going to come out that she's way smarter than she actually like pretends to be, except to, again, Iodine, of all people. It's, it shows foresight. I don't think it shows that he's necessarily had a good idea to begin with.
Yeah.
I don't know about good intentions via Strake, but like at least they were guided it was intentional rather than kind of like, I'm preserving my power at all costs and that's all that matters.
Well, I think having it stay as the wealthiest get to be nobles would be bad intentions because it's unstable. But knowing that it is unstable and putting in a backup plan, I think is good intention.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean by it being intentional rather than just pure chaos, where he's just like, I'm going to do what I can to keep you under my thumb. No, it was like chaos that was meant to lead to structure. So it shows intention. I don't know necessarily that you can call those intentions good. Relative, I suppose. Go ahead.
What? Sorry, I thought you were going to talk some more.
No, I'm done.
What do you think of Elantris and the way non-Elantrians treated them in their current situation?
I mean, it's pretty normal for people to like find an other and fear or distrust or hate them. And we kind of see how that is developed and manipulated in the way that Hrathen like tries to use people's fear and hatred of the Elantrians to push forth his political and theological goals. And, it was understandable because, like, we see examples of that sort of thing happening all the time in day-to-day stuff. So it's believable that, like, people would see, like, the fall of somebody great and be like, oh, well, then that means they were lying and now they're cursed, and that makes them lesser. Like, it was believable to me, I guess, even if it was only, like, 10 years removed from the fall, or these people were gods at one point. But, like, I mean, think about it. If you put your whole belief into something and it turns out that it's not what you believed it to be, people have a hard time dealing with, like, unmet expectation, And so I thought it played out pretty realistically for the most part. I'm a little surprised that they were as tolerant as they were, actually, in some cases. Like, the fact that they, like, quarantined the city and would throw people in there. Like, and even at least initially gave them food. But
yeah.
what do you think of their treatment?
I found it really interesting with maybe it's contagious mindset, and we gotta separate ourselves from them, and if we come into contact them, maybe we'll get the disease. That aspect of it I thought was kind of interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and relevant in today's time and age of COVID matters.
Yeah, only 17 years after this book was released. Or 15, at least, when it started.
I thought it was surprising to see the level of hatred that people were able to be incited to by the Yorn and the other priests. But I also thought it rang true. Like, it seemed like a realistic reaction, but I was surprised that it seemed like a realistic reaction.
Yeah, it's a little sad that it seems realistic, but I also had the same thought that Via Drake and K. Brock did at one point. I thought, like, oh, this is gonna turn, like, zombie-ish, like, or if it wasn't zombie-ish, then I thought somebody had control of, like, a disease, and, like, whether it was magical or not, Yeah, so I thought it was like, oh, we're going, like, horror novel with this thing. And I mean, I'm kind of glad that it didn't, but, like, that seemed to be for a while the way it was going. I mean, it conjures up that image, when you talk about, like, this insatiable hunger. Their bodies are, like, deteriorating before their eyes. Cuts don't heal, and yeah. Oh, VS Drake had a good point. Is what we were both talking about, is that mob mentality can be surprising, even if it is understandable and given the examples of it that we've experienced lately.
Yeah, I definitely agree with VS Drake too about his most recent comment on the Fjordians breaking the Elantrian magic.
We don't know that they didn't.
Yeah, technically, maybe they did. Yeah. We don't know what created the chasm. We just know the chasm was created, and that's what broke stuff. But
well, yeah,
I do think it's interesting. I did think that at the beginning, especially with how the Yorn was like, "Fuck Elantrians."
Yeah, it seemed like, especially since, like, they had a very, like, Catholic setup with, like, the Pope being the only one who gets to talk to God, and what's his face starts with a W. Can't remember, Warren or whatever the fuck it is the only one that gets to talk to Jareth. And it was that kind of idea that like, oh, well, maybe this guy does, like, he rose to that spot because he does have like, he's the one who also discovered whatever magic the Elantrians had and like turned it against him, type of thing. you know uh again, I thought it was like maybe attempted zombie apocalypse to like consume them from the inside out. Like, I had that theory pretty early on. I still think they could have been the one that caused the earthquake that created the chasm. Like, it even says what towards the end that uh Brandon realizes that there's other ways to connect with the door and draw upon the magic. So we
The
still don't know.
Fjordel's out
Yeah.
way, well,
Well,
a more barbaric way away.
well, yeah, they're talking about like using like human sacrifice to make it happen, like, which I guess still ties to the land if the people are of the land.
Technically, everything ties back to the land.
Wait, say that again.
But anyway,
You
I said
cut
technically
off there on
everything
my.
ties.
Well, I mean, of course. Well, but maybe that's the whole thing, is like we're all one and you're just tapping into like the energy of like the oneness of everything. It's just either it's through violence or science, or who knows, maybe the uh Duras or whatever, the super chill dudes, they're doing it just by vibing.
Let's throw it over to let's talk about religion real quick.
All right.
K Brock mentions if you're the king / Weirn, getting to be the only one who talks to God gives you a bit of credibility. What did you think of the what do they call it? Shukorak?
Yeah, that was the hardest part to follow, was what the hell the religions were called, because there were like various ways in which it was referred to. Like, I know Jareth is like the god or whatever, but like I think Shukorath is the one, like their version of it, because there's like three things that all like basically stem from like one mother religion, and like they branched off. Yeah, Shukorath and Shudethic. But like
Shugareth and Shukez.
Shudethic, yeah. They have similarities to them. It's just a matter of essentially who they believe is like the primary god. It again makes sense that like the political structure, like that's how a lot of religions like today came through. Like, look, of like three of the world's major religions, like Islam, Christianity, Judaism, all technically worship the same god, but they have like different prophets or whatever. Like, they have these variations to it. Yeah. Exactly. K-Rock, like very similar to the Abrahamic faiths, where it's just a matter of interpretation, and it is normal for people in positions of power to take that faith and turn it into something, as like turn it into like a force for, it can be used as a force for good, but it can also be used for a force for kind of what's the term I'm looking for here, just like accumulating power and influence. And it was done in a very believable way, considering like they talk about the slow progression and how they're just kind of ramping up, because they're like, oh, we see the finish line. I mean, look at what happened with the Roman Empire. Like, a lot of that, started off as technically pagan, but like some of the biggest increases to the empire came when it became Christian, and it was driven by that need to like do essentially spread the faith, not just like faith is a good motivator to do things that may otherwise be unsavory. uh like let's take a look at a character that we haven't really talked that much about, but like Hrathen. What did you think about his character development? Let's do that. Let's throw that into chat. It's like, what did you think about Hrathen's character development in this story?
It was honestly he was one of my favorite characters. I found it interesting that Sanderson decided to draw him up as somebody who was very high in the church, was like, you know, in terms of levels of the church, he was, you know, like the third highest level. And at the same time, he really didn't passionately feel that his religion was like something that sparks joy in his life. He followed it, he believed in it, but for him it was always logical. And I felt like that was a really cool moment in his character when he described about how he understands that normal followers like the psycho guy follow with passion, where he follows with reason. And the fact that he is able to separate essentially reality from, you know, his belief in his religion and what he has to do to convert people to his belief. It was definitely interesting manipulation of what's right and wrong. And I thoroughly enjoyed watching as he kind of came to that realization near the end where he was like, I kind of maybe did this the wrong way, and maybe what I'm doing is the wrong thing to do, and maybe I should have worked from my heart from the beginning instead of just trying to convert purely out of reason.
Honestly, like that's a great summary of it. But like I had the same thought about Hrathen. Is like usually when I see characters in a book, it doesn't take me long to get a pretty good beat on like what kind of character they are. I really like the fact that it took me for freaking ever to kind of get his deal. You know, like at first you think he's just like, this is just a guy doing a job. He's, like you said, very tactical. He is very logical. It is just, I was given a job, I will do my job. I'm effectively a theological soldier, like a political soldier, like here to accomplish a mission. You know, it didn't even, like, honestly, I spent the first, pretty much the first act of this book, like the first part one of this book, believing that, like, kind of thinking that he didn't actually believe it, like that it was an act, that it was like, this is just like the position I'm in order to have power in this world. I'm just like taking on this religion as my means to do what I'm going to do. And then in part two, you get a sense that he actually believes this stuff. Like, he doesn't have the passion that I forget the name of the zealot, the one who ends up betraying him.
We're really good at names here.
Yeah, like, again, in the best of times, we suck at this, and this is so many names in this one. But I think it was it Diren or Diren, or no, it was Dilof.
Dilof, yeah.
Yeah, Dilof. So Dilof is you know, he doesn't have the passion or the supposed like talent for just like you know, getting people's attention regarding this, but like he has a tie to the faith. He actually believes in his mission, even if it is like he believes that what he's doing is in service of the greater good of the people, like, and it comes out in like these very subtle ways, but you still don't like him because he's super freaking manipulative, but you kind of open up to him because he shows that like there is like his faith actually is important to him. Like it isn't just a mission. I mean, it very much is a mission, but like that's not all there is to it. And you get it when you realize that he has caution about like the overzealousness of Dilof. And then in the part 3, when he does end up switching sides, it is still shocking that he would go that far, but none of it feels unearned. You know, I love that kind of character development where I was like, I have no idea who you are. I'm getting these pieces of it, and then you make this really big change that makes sense and fits. And you don't really see a lot of that like drastic character development in like whole novels sometimes, let alone in the antagonist, you know, for most of the book.
Can you imagine that emotional pull though, to know that you poured every second of your life for the last couple months into saving the people of the entire population of a country, and you're convinced you can do it, and you're there, you've done it, it is yours, it's within your grasp, and then this fucknut over here comes out and goes, you know what? Just kidding. We're gonna kill them all anyway.
I like VS Drake's comment that even like everybody got a character arc, including like stagehand number 5. And it is true, but like Hrathen, I think, was like the epitome of like character development. Yes. Why don't we do that as well? As like, aside from Hrathen, who was your favorite character development story? And why?
Favorite.
Who had your favorite character arc and why, aside from Hrathen? I'd jump in with mine, but I'm typing the question in.
Characters. Development.
Okay, let's go.
I don't know. I mean, Hrathen is really like my favorite. I mean, he's the one who.
I said aside from him though.
I know, but like, he's just the one who understands at the end. He's like, well, fuck, and he has the giant revelation at the end.
It looks like Stormreed said one of their favorites was Dooley, who was a good guy with a great vision. I'd have to agree. I don't know much in the way of like that character felt like fairly consistent to me. Like, yeah, they I mean, Dooley definitely comes out of their shell a bit, but like, I don't know,
to me, he's the guy who wants to do the right thing, but is overcome with the pressure of doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Just kind of like paralyzed. And yeah, there is like at the very end, like shows up and he's like, "Ha, I've done it." No, but like, no, that's the like best bud kind of character, like that you're just like, you like, because like, yeah, they might bitch and moan about stuff, but they're just there all the time, like no matter what, especially for the right people. Well, I guess his character arc was having enough positive influence to not be negative all the time. Honestly, I liked the character development of Sereni. I liked seeing like a character grow in confidence, like like having a lot of confidence, but realizing like accepting the things that she has issue with, like even if it's little things like the fact that she sucked at like needlepoint, but like realizing what her role is, accepting it, and still being happy with her life despite the craziness going on. Uh, and it's a bit more of a subtle arc, but I liked seeing a character that didn't, like, especially a character that had every reason to back down from stuff and never does, learns to overcome like pretty drastic odds when you think about it, like showing up and like, hey, you've got a husband now that's dead. um, like
that must have been a wild twist.
Yeah, and like I think coming to terms with the reality of her family as well as a part of her character growth is realizing that like this narrative that had been constructed around her was not necessarily what was going on, and like that lent a lot to like learning more about like the full cast of ridiculous characters around her and her family. The pirate uncle, the many cousins she didn't know she had, you know, and even finding out that her husband isn't actually dead. He's not dead yet. It's getting better.
I will say I was kind of jumping in on chat here a little bit, but
Yeah.
I was really surprised that more people didn't hide family members who turned into Elantrians, like the cousin who was secretly an Elantrian for years.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I actually, again, when I was reading about like the making of this book, like reading some of the stuff on Brandon Sanderson's site, apparently that guy was supposed to be like another baddie, like he was supposed to be like the Mad Prince or something like that, and he was supposed to come in and they had to like strike it because it was just too much, too late in the story, But I actually, like you said, I like that more subtle take of like, oh, this guy just remained hidden from the world, to avoid this terrible secret coming out. That's it shows you like the lengths that people actually went through behind the scenes.
Yeah. What did you think of Kyan, the uncle?
Honestly, like I liked his character because, like, I mean, what's not to like about a dude who just like cooks gourmet snacks in the middle of like the most stressful situations? I loved him as a bit of like comic relief in this. He was a serious enough character to provide exposition on certain things that felt realistic given his situation. He provides drama and tension in the end, but ultimately, like he was providing like wisecracks through the middle of it, like him and Dooley. Like like. I just love that scene when they are all meeting around the table to like discuss like, do we kill the king? And like Serena's like, please don't make food, and he's like, I won't, and then comes back with like a full 3-course meal. He's like, you guys take a break.
I just threw it together.
He's like, you guys take a break. I'll be right back with the meat wraps. Oh yeah, but like
I've heard of people eating their emotions, but I've never heard of somebody cooking their emotions.
Yeah. I definitely have cooking and baking their emotions. That's definitely a thing. Usually it's accompanied by eating, but not always. V.S. Drake says, yeah, he's their spirit, his spirit animal, and yes, Stormreed's right. It's a good, diverse character that is both a cook, a giant warrior, a merchant, a family man. Like like especially him between him and his like two younger kids. Forget their names.
Here, I'll pull him up. I've got him right here.
But yeah, like his two younger kids, not Lukel, who's the older son, but you know, it was that whole family dynamic was fun, and like I think a much needed bit of levity in, you know, an ultimately fairly serious book.
Yeah. Kine is like, in my mind, he was the comfort character that Sanderson threw in to be like, okay, I know we're talking about very serious things. We got these dead people over here, and we got talks of treason over there, and we've got this whack job religious nut over here who's going to try and take over the city. Comedy break. Here's Uncle Kine.
Well, and not only is it a little bit. Yeah, and I also like that he would throw out like the little like he also played like the only like real fatherly role in the entire freaking series, too. Like every other father, well, I mean, like I guess Serena's father kind of does, but he's kind of far and away, and Teo doesn't really come out until the very end. But you know, he plays the warm fatherly character that I think, like we as the story, like you said, we as the story readers need to get through all this serious shit. You know.
VS Drake comments, what he loved about this book is seeing early Brando Sando. And I couldn't agree more. I was super excited when we ended up getting this book on the list because, especially considering our next book. But
yeah,
the fact that Brandon Sanderson rose from this point, like in my mind, this is an awesome book. Like this is a really good book, and he gets better from here.
Yeah. I would agree. I'd say this is a very solid, well above average book, and like if this was a starting point, but like the thing is like it's really cool to see where you can pick out the things that he realized he did well in this one and used it to make a better book. And it's many better books down the road, and I think that's the sign of like a truly great author is people who are willing and able to take their successes, take their books, break them down into the good, the bad, and the ugly, and learn from them. You know, and it's a great message to all the authors out there that your first book doesn't have to be some, you know, grand, you know, novel for the ages. You know, you can work towards it, you know, and we're talking about a guy who's now arguably the most prolific science fiction fantasy author in like modern times. And
get your book out there, let fans tear it apart, listen to them, hear what they liked, hear what they didn't like, and write another one with that criticism and feedback in mind. And that's something that's exactly what Sanderson did. Is he took this book and went, I did good, but I can do better, and he done better.
By the way, circling back, just because we've got some good stuff coming in from chat to like talking about Kieran, you know, having a good family and easily likable character in a book, especially when there's so many that are hard to like get a beat on, you know, like where deception is the norm, and it's just somebody that you can accept as being good. I think that is an understated part in the book, because like usually you just get that from the protagonist, right? You know, because you get this like automatic bit of good, and we kind of get that from Rayoden, but like that's that's tempered by the fact that like he's constantly on the edge of going mad, and
Yeah.
like, but to like have this like just this beacon of light in the book like that is good for the soul.
Kind of throwing it back to the character growth thing. Raoden's character growth from somebody who was like, I have so many ideas about how I would govern better, to somebody who then turns around, becomes an Elantrian, and goes, okay, I can apply what I know in a whole new setting, and it's not necessarily about me being the right person, but getting people to realize that what they do matters.
Mm-hmm.
is something kind of subtle rating growth that I kind of like.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And to that point about like Raiden like having that kind of more subtle growth, um, which is obviously aided by his studying of the Aeons and like having like he had to have his focus before he almost broke down, and you see like the mental suffering that he has weighing him down. And I really wanted to see, since like it does come up and it does, and just like in the book, we're going to throw it in there last minute. What did you think of what did you think of the magic system?
Yeah, Storm mentioned he thought it was cool that the map is what brings power to Elantris, and I think it's really cool that kind of similarly they channel the world around them to make their magic. I wouldn't be surprised in the sequel that Sando's working on. By the way, Brandon Sanderson is returning to Elantris and writing a sequel, in case you guys didn't know. I think we'll see a lot more of that, like explaining how the Aeons work is actually tied to specific things that you can find in the real world, above and beyond the initial drawing of the map that gets all of the Aeons to work. I think it's a really cool way to go above and beyond just saying there's a magic system, but saying there's a magic system and this is how it functions on a base level. And I also think it's kind of neat that Raiden has to learn all through how this magic system works in order to figure out what's wrong with it. He's not just like, oh, I have it. It doesn't work, but maybe I'll figure it out. He keeps at it. He keeps studying. He keeps trying to figure out more and more about how it works, and eventually comes to the realization of how to make it work again.
Honestly, I kept getting very much Stargate vibes from that. Is like it, like I didn't know that the chasm was going to be it, but I was just like, you're missing the seventh chevron. Especially with
dial home.
You need the point of origin.
Okay, at the bottom, draw 127.0.0.1. No.
But like it was very similar to that in that it makes sense, I think, and Brandon Sanderson did a good job of giving us the how without giving us the why, and the why gives us more to want to learn. We understand how it works in that specific context, but not the why, and because we don't understand the why, we don't understand the how of how other people interact with this magic system. Like, we know roughly it comes from the earth, which makes sense, but like, that opens up, like I said, the world to more questions and intrigue, and it keeps you going much in the same way that learning this stuff keeps our characters going. And just like V.S. Drake and Storm Reed said, Sanderson likes to take his characters and us along with them to like the very depths of like, I'm about to give up. No, I can't. I must come back. I must get this done. you know, it was a little, I mean, not quite Deus Ex Machina, but like a little bit of like, or it's probably more akin to plot armor-y when he's just like, aha, I got it, while he's like resting in the pool. But like the message is still the same, where, you know, you've got to, you know, when something is that important, you have to give everything to it, even if you're on the brink of despair, which is something that, you know, I think can resonate with most people. But, you know, I do like that he also did that while using a system that wasn't too distracting either. Like K. Brock mentions that the aeons are very similar to like kanji and Chinese characters, where the different pictograms or symbols are representative of something tangible that we know. Like usually the strokes in kanji and stuff are meant to represent very specifically either sounds, or like they make a picture of something that the sound is related to. You know, this is a bit more literal, where it's like not only do you have to like match it to like the land, but like not just like vaguely, but like the exact angles and lengths and widths and stuff. But I really appreciated that, despite the fact that it was kind of thrown in there at the end, it was still treated with care and made interesting without being distracting to the overall story. Yeah.
I will say too, like, one thing that I like about Sanderson's writing style is this is a story in a magical world with an intricate magic system. And besides the Elantrian's transformation, we have no magic that happens until the very end.
Well, that's why I was surprised to find out that there wasn't technically a sequel to this. There's 2 other books related to it, but it's not a sequel. You know,
Yeah, there are two like ebooks / novellas, and then Elantris 2 is on Brandon Sanderson's writing list as of now.
Yeah, I actually just read that like right before this. I was just surprised that, like, given like that this was one of his first books, that it hadn't, you know. So
he left it for a long time.
yeah, like let's put this. But I guess it kind of makes sense, because that's a story that would be, I think a lot of there's kind of like this sunk cost fallacy that some authors get stuck in, where like, oh, I started this series, I have to do this to be, I have to finish this off to be a success. And he's like, no, I'm going to start something else. If I feel like I can come back to this and do it justice and do better, I will. But, you know, I don't have to right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the other thing of V.S. Drake, is like having some Cosmere tie-ins would be pretty cool, and it would be pretty easy to do, honestly, when you think about it.
We do know that Hoyd was there, so maybe we'll get more details about his presence.
Interesting.
But let's do it. Owing to the fact that it's kind of late already, let's start wrapping up here.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and just like, we'll go straight into final impressions then. Would you like me to start this one off then?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So after what I thought was a bit of a rough start, I would have to say I enjoyed this book. It was enough that I didn't feel, it was good enough that I didn't feel like having read it like twice. And this is like what, a 600-700 page book. I read it twice in a matter of a month, and I didn't feel like actively bored at any point, and I was actively intrigued at many points, especially at the end. You know, you can see the growth of the author throughout the novel, and like knowing where Brandon Sanderson went afterwards, it's, you know, understandable that he's been the success that he is from this book. If you're a Brandon Sanderson fan, absolutely read this if you haven't already. As like a fantasy fan, if you are okay with political intrigue and theology as well as like high fantasy stuff, this is right up your alley. if I would say if you outright hated episode one, if you outright hated episode one or episode three of the Star Wars franchise, you may not find this to be your taste. I'm leaving out episode two because that's a whole other deal we're not going to get into. But like my point being, if you don't like that sort of things, you might struggle with this book. But if you can find tension and action in like that sort of like political intrigue with action coming late in the game, this is a fantastic book and I'd absolutely recommend it. Otherwise, you might have a little bit of trouble. If nothing else, though, there's some cool characters, cool world. If you can stick with it, it's worth it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Elantris is one of my all-time faves. It we already said this, but it really shows Brandon's progression as a writer, and that even if you are somebody who chugs out a masterpiece, there are things you could do better. And Brandon Sanderson is not the kind of person who looks at mistakes in his writing and goes, well, guess I just suck then. You know, he goes, I understand what I did there and how I can make it better. And even in the parts that aren't even that bad, but aren't perfection, you know, he understands that those parts could be improved and improves upon them in his future books. But Elantris, in and of its own, is a surprisingly compelling political story with an insane battle scene at the end. You know, there's tons of twists and turns. Sanderson did a really good job of keeping us guessing right up until the end about what was going to happen next and what conflict could possibly get pulled out of a hat by either the church or Serene, or by any other of the characters in the story. So it was a really compelling read for me, and one I enjoy going back to from time to time.
I can definitely see why you do. Definitely would recommend.
For those of you who are new to the Brandon Sanderson way of things, Hoyd is a reappearing character in almost all of the Cosmere stories. So keep an eye out for him. He's out there. He predominantly exists in the Stormlight books and is named so in them, but he exists in Mistborn, he exists in Elantris. He's all over the place. So,
and for those of you who don't know what the Cosmere is, that's like the MCU or DCU, but Brando Sando books.
Yeah, it's the Brandon Sanderson universe of collective stories.
Yeah, some of his novels aren't in it, but like there's a good chunk of them that are. But why don't we go ahead? Well, Kay Brock says that they like that this book surprised her, and you know, like I can agree with that. Like it's nice to find a book that can like keep you guessing, especially if you're an avid reader, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyways, why don't we go ahead and wrap things up for tonight then?
So our next book is Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. We know that already. I don't think we know what our book after that is going to be.
No, we got a little bit behind on doing our votes, but we will be doing. We will have that finished up later tonight, and you know we'll keep it open a little bit longer just because we're having the technical issues, and we'll have a book out for you soon. You can go ahead and check out our socials for that or the website. We'll have it on there as soon as we can. And for those of you who would like to contribute a book to our next vote, not this immediate one, which was Beach Reads, our next one is going to be Americana. That is all books like quintessentially American. We're talking anything from road trips to apple pie to sports if it's fictional only, um, to discovery or what have you. Like just we're talking America, not Murica. All right.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
Things that come to mind are anything from Catcher in the Rye to On the Road, or well, those are the first two that came to mind in my head. Even the Great Gatsby would come up to that. So just all things quintessentially Americana. So if you have anything on your list, please go ahead and throw it at us so we can add it on to our next vote.
And Words of Radiance is 1 month out. I know we usually do every other week, but considering it's summer and these books are massive, we're going to do another month-long one. Mm-hmm. Words of Radiance comes in at like 48 or 49 hours long for audio. So if you haven't started yet, definitely get cranking because it's a long one. And just a personal note from me, the Stormlight Archive is by far my favorite series. If you have not started it before, if you have not read The Way of Kings, I would actually suggest that you read The Way of Kings first. Yeah. It's in no way can you not read Words of Radiance without reading The Way of Kings, but the experience behind The Way of Kings is one that is life-changing, in my opinion, and it will be dulled by reading Words of Radiance first. So even though they are extremely long books, I would highly suggest reading Way of Kings before Words of Radiance.
Yep, and if you plan to do both in a month, get started now because they are both 1,000+ page books. It's a commitment, but I'd agree with Adam, well worth it.
I just finished my re-listen of Way of Kings yesterday, and I started 2.5 weeks ago, I think. So and I've probably listened to books more in the last couple of weeks than I have in any other time. It just takes so long to get through them, but they're so good. But yeah, right. Enough of me gushing about Brandon Sanderson's writing abilities. Brandon Sanderson, if you're watching, I love you.
All right, you can fangirl later. Let's close them out, shall we?
Yeah. Other plugs for you guys. DMstable.com is where you can find out all the information you could ever want to know about us and our parent company, DM's Table. Go there for all of any information that you want, including all of the links to all of the various websites I'm going to rattle off to you now. Once again, Etsy is out there. It's dmstable.com/Etsy. Go check that out for awesome merch. YouTube is also a link you can find below the video. That's where we post all of our videos. So if you missed a book session and you're really curious about what we thought about one of the past books, go check out YouTube. Patreon is how we pay the bills. Patreon.com/DMstable is where you can find our personal Patreon page, or you can click the link below the video. $2 a month gets you the right to vote. There are other tiers, but that's just the intro tier. And we very much appreciate all of our patrons who have already donated their funds to us. Thank you for being avid supporters of the book community and the DM's Table family. Facebook and Twitter are our socials. Facebook is at the DM's Table and Twitter is at DM's Table. That's our main way of communicating outside of seeing our faces on here. Alan's really good about adding stuff on there, and Alex and I are trying our best. So if you need a reminder about what book is next and stuff, check out our Facebook and Twitter pages. And if you really want to just talk to us on the daily, you should check out our Discord server. The Discord server can be reached by messaging us on either Facebook or Twitter, and we'll get you the link for it. On the Discord server, we have just general nerd chats, 3D printing chats, D&D chats, book chats, all of the nerdy chats. So come check it out if you're interested. And then, Alex, you already talked about our theme for future books.
Yeah, that's the only one we've got so far. The summer makes it a little bit difficult just because plans change and availability changes. But, I figure if we've got at least one ahead of time, just shoot us your suggestions. Even if you have ones that have nothing to do with the theme, like, we're always willing to take more. Otherwise, we'll keep pulling from our already extensive list to, like, make up the next one. We spent a couple weeks, like this one and our next book are going to be like pretty well in our wheelhouse. So having a couple themes in a row felt a little needed. Get us out of our comfort zone a bit, shake things up. So, look forward to seeing what you guys send us and reading what gets voted for by patrons. So with that, though, thank you everybody for showing up today, for sticking with us. We started late, so we appreciate you all. It was an awesome chat. It was a fun read and, great episode. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, guys, for joining us tonight, and hope to see you next book for my favorite book. Bye, guys.